Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Shell Bitumen Centenary Paving Forward webinar series. My name is Zilin Yuan, Global Marketing Manager for Shell Bitumen. I'll go through some of the administrative details of today's webinar before handing the floor to our speakers and panelists. Safety is Shell's #1 priority, so before we begin, please make sure that you are joining in from a safe place today. You can hear the alarm and are aware of the evacuation procedure in the event of an emergency. If you are joining in from home, please make sure that the stove is off or attended to. The exit walkway is clear. We will not be discussing any commercial sensitive information in today's discussion, nor to comment on specific customers or competitors. All attendees are automatically muted when joining the webinar to minimize interruptions. Please note that today's session is being recorded. Throughout today's session, you will be able to submit questions through the Q&A function available within the platform. If you look at the screen right now, you can click on Option button, which is showing as 1A, and tap the Q&A icon, indicate as 1B. The Q&A panel box will appear on the right-hand side of your screen, indicated as 1C. You can enter your question and click Send. If you need any help during the session, please use the chat function to send a message to us. Click the chat button, indicated as 2A on the screen. The chat panel box will appear on the right-hand side, which is indicated as 2B. We will also be using the poll function throughout today's session to gather your inputs. Any submission you make will be anonymous. When the poll opens, it will appear on the right-hand side panel, showing as 3A. To get you familiar with the poll function, we'll take the first poll now. Oops. Can't open poll, sorry. Give me 1 second, I can't open the poll. Apologies, we can't seem to be open the polling for you. That's okay, we'll come back to this now in a short while. So let's look at agenda for today. Without further delay, I would like to invite Jason Wang to share a few words. Jason is Vice President for Shell Specialties and leads Shell's Bitumen and Sulfur Global Business. Jason, over to you.
Thank you, Celine. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. It's really great to see the number of participants in this call. I know that you are dialing in from different parts of the world, so I'm sure that this will be a great interactive session today. Now, before we start the webinar, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the support you have given to us during the COVID-19 period. The COVID-19 pandemic has been really challenging for all of us, both professionally and personally. It is very important that we continue to work closely together to manage this situation. Now, for me, many of you will know that I live in Shanghai. And China being the first country which experienced the lockdown. It's really tough. My family and I had to stay at home for more than 10 weeks. The situation is getting better now. I would say that it's still not 100% there, but it's much improved. Now, I know that you live in different countries, and you may be experiencing now in different phases of the pandemic. I sincerely hope that you will continue to keep safe and healthy. Now, as for this webinar, this is really marking a kickoff of a series of virtual engagement. We have only one objective in mind, which is about staying connected with all of you through this kind of virtual dialogue for meaningful subjects around our industry, key trends, opportunities, and challenges. Most of you will know that, we have been working in this industry, trying to develop innovative solutions in both products and services in order to make road paving more efficient, last longer, and have greater durability. Now, year 2020 is a very, very special year for us because we have started our scale production of bitumen at Shoalhaven Refinery in the UK for 100 years. And this is really, a unique moment. Partnering with customers like you really make us grow. And now we are the world's largest international bitumen marketers, and we operate in more than 30 countries in the world. Now, to commemorate this centenary, I would really like to share with you a video which shows the 100-year history of Shell Bitumen. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again for being an integral part of our 100 years of history. I feel really proud of that. Now, obviously, this is not the end of the story, as we will obviously be continue working with you and continue this journey. It's important that we continue to work together to be innovative and really working on developing some new products and solutions for the future world. I hope you will enjoy the session today, and I really encourage you to be participative in putting forward your questions. I'm now going to hand over the time to my colleague, Professor John Reid, and he's the GM of Shell Specialty Technologies. He will be no stranger to any one of you, and John has already joined us in Shell for over 20 years, and he has been very instrumental in leading the development of product and services and solutions in this industry. And many of you will also know that he published the very famous Shell Bitumen the Bitumen Handbook, and I understand that it's now already the 6th edition. Now, without any further ado, over to you, John.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome everyone. Now, I've met hundreds of customers over the years, including many of you on this call, but this is the first time I'm speaking to so many of you at the same time over a virtual platform, which for me, and I hope for you, is very exciting. The world is changing fast and will continue to evolve at a pace never seen before. On top of that, the world's population is growing at a rapid pace, with urbanization as a clear megatrend, and we are seeing global growth in transport networks. At Shell, we look at these changes closely, as they're important to our businesses globally, including the bitumen business. Now, road infrastructure is essential to modern living, but urbanization and denser transport and industrial activity have resulted in worsening levels of local air quality. The need for cleaner construction and transport infrastructure requires every industry, including ours, to do its part. And so the question that comes to my mind is, what else can we do with roads other than fulfilling their primary purpose of moving goods and people from A to B? In addition, roads must get better at what they do, as congestion is already a major concern for our cities, and the damage to our roads will inevitably increase. Consequently, roads need to last longer and be designed to be durable as well as being cleaner, whether it's to reduce odours or neutralise them, to reduce emissions during paving, to incorporate more recycled material, or to have a lower carbon footprint. Jason mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic over the last few months, and this has also presented new challenges and opportunities to our industry. As countries have shut borders and enforced lockdowns, we have seen road construction activities slowed or fully halted, and while some governments have pledged continued commitment to road investments, others have, understandably so, diverted funds from infrastructure construction to healthcare. The pandemic has also driven a significant change in the way people are connecting, such as this webinar, and indeed the way that they are commuting. As many countries start to enter the recovery phase and begin to kickstart their economic recovery, we need to get the message out there that roads are the arteries through which economy pulses, that links producers to markets, workers to jobs, students to school, and the sick to hospitals. Roads play a vital role in the global economic recovery. Now, all these facts represent unique challenges and opportunities for us in the road industry, and we need to ask ourselves, how can we build better roads that will last longer? How can we make our roads safer? How can we build roads more efficiently and use less energy? How can we build roads, tunnels, and airports that reduce energy consumption? And how can we build roads that have a significantly reduced impact on the environment? In today's webinar, I'm pleased to have my team of global technical specialists with me for an interactive discussion on our experiences and learnings in addressing these challenges. So firstly, I would like to introduce David Strickland. David looks after the manufacturing of bitumen at all of our refineries, as well as blending in all of our depots around the world, and also looks after several other major projects. He's worked for Shell for many, many years and has been part of this industry for more than 30 years. So thank you, David, for being part of the panel. Next is Richard Taylor. Richard will be known to many of you, and he is my technology development manager. He looks after the transition from taking up something from research and development into the market. He also looks after sustainability as well as intellectual property and product management. So thank you, Richard, for joining us. Next, we have Frank Beer. Frank is my regional technology manager for Europe, and so he looks after everything from the technical service end of things through to all of the work that we do in our solution center in Strasbourg. And he is an incredibly experienced and long-standing member of the team and has been with Shell for many years now, as well as in the industry prior to that. And lastly, but certainly not least, is David DeMello. David looks after the R&D in Bangalore, runs the whole team, all of the projects that we run there, that develop all the projects that we bring to market. The most recent of which that you probably will have heard about is Shell Bitumen Fresh Air. So again, welcome, David, and thank you for joining us. So as you can see, our panel today represents knowledge from different geographical and technical areas. So please take this opportunity to share what's on your mind. I look forward to your active participation to make the next 30 minutes exciting and meaningful. And so normally at this point, I would be asking you a polling question, but as that functionality is not working, what I would like you to do is to think about the following subjects when you're asking your questions. So extending the service life of roads, whether we have a lack of skilled workforce, are raw material supply disruptions going to be an issue for us? Reduced environmental impact of roads, reduced funding for roadworks, increasing road maintenance requirements, and recycling of bitumen and asphalt. And if none of those fits the challenges that you are facing, then please let us know what subjects are particularly on your mind through either the chat box or through the Q&A box. So, thank you very much for sharing your questions with us. Hopefully we can help you in finding solutions to address some of the challenges that you're facing. And we will use all of the information from the questions that you ask in order to be able to help us shape the rest of this webinar series to ensure that we're discussing what you want to hear about. Now, let's take some of the questions that we have received already. So the first question is, what are we doing? I've lost my place here. Where's the question? Sorry. What are we doing to increase the recyclability of bitumen? My apologies, lost my place. David, I think that this one is for you, David de Mello.
Thank you very much, John. I was hoping that you'd call on me to address this question. I find it a very interesting question for the simple reason that I think we're quite fortunate to already be part of an industry that by nature is actually very circular. Now, I don't need to tell you on the call that we, at the end of pavement life, we use the reclaimed asphalt mixtures and we make new pavements out of that. Right? And we see a lot of reports across regions and countries of the huge amount of the reclaimed, the RAP material that's used to make new pavements, so extremely circular. The question then arises, what can we do to increase the sustainability of the resultant pavements? And then we come to how do we get longer lasting pavements that have incorporated RAP materials in there. So yes, we've got certain solutions in the market today, for example, Carafalt RC. But then the challenge we ask ourselves is, can we do more? And that is indeed the question that we asked ourselves. And so we're using the knowledge that we have of bitumen, of aged bitumen, to see if we can work on solutions and technologies that in combination with the RAP material will result in a pavement that will address the needs of tomorrow, be it traffic loading, climatic, and result in a pavement that lasts even longer. So having a more sustainable industry in addition to a very circular one. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So the next question which has come through, and by the way, we ran a webinar this morning and I was asked to read the questions twice to make sure that everybody heard them. I'll do that from now on. So the next question is Shell developing high-performing products for mastic asphalt or bitumen emulsions? So that's, is Shell developing high-performing products for mastic asphalt or bitumen emulsions? And as we have Frank, our leader for Europe on the line, I'll address this to Frank.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So mastic asphalt and emulsions have one thing in common. They don't like changes. In China and Asia, for example, we are actively producing emulsions already, so we know what we're talking about. We are constantly looking for additives in our R&D lab in Bangalore, which help to compensate changes implied by the nature of the aggregate or by the nature of the bitumen. Mastic asphalt, especially when it comes to indoor flooring, is a niche product. However, we successfully enabled the mastic asphalt industry in Germany to continue with the production of mastic asphalt by developing low-temperature solutions for them. The emulsion market in Europe is quite diverse. There are some countries where emulsions do have quite a big market share, like France. In other countries, there is very low demand for emulsions. Whereas Shell doesn't produce emulsions in Europe, we are in constant contact with additive suppliers to further improve quality of emulsions. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. You're not going to get off the hook quite so easily because the next question also is going to fall to you. Okay. So let me read this twice to make sure everybody hears the question. So road maintenance is increasingly an issue for cities to manage. What are some learnings Shell can share to overcome the challenges maintaining the roads and highways? So that's road maintenance is increasingly an issue for our cities to manage. What are some of the learnings that Shell can share on overcoming the challenges in maintaining the roads and highways?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So from my point of view, the best maintenance is no maintenance. When we enable the asphalt industry to pave roads which last longer, maintenance is less of an issue, as maintenance intervals can be increased. There are solutions to make roads last longer, for example, the use of polymer modified bitumen or special asphalt mix designs. But specification plays a role here as well. What we consider to be a high-performing polymer modified bitumen is not necessarily allowed in each country. And that's due to specification. So the specification might not fit, and that's a real shame. Another thing is, of course, cost. When building a road, using conventional bitumen is cheaper than using polymer modified bitumen. But this is only true for the initial costs. In the long run, and economically speaking, using high-quality ingredients is cheaper, as these ingredients can make the road last longer. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Frank. And actually, just the way that these questions have come in, the next one also falls to you. Hopefully we'll give somebody else a turn in a moment. But so the question is, when is Shell Bitumen Fresh Air in all grades available from Miro and Godorf? So that's when is Shell Fresh Air in all grades available from Miro and Godorf? And just for everybody's understanding, Miro and Godorf are two of our production facilities in Europe. So Frank, over to you.
Yeah. That's absolutely correct. So we're just implementing the manufacturing of Shell Bitumen Fresh Air at the Shell-owned refinery in Cologne, in Godorf. We are confident to be ready to supply Shell Bitumen Fresh Air from Godorf with the beginning of next season. As most of you probably know, Miro is a joint venture refinery, and we need to request some changes at the site to enable the manufacturing of Shell Bitumen Fresh Air. We are in close contact with the Miro Bitumen team, and we hope to launch Shell Bitumen Fresh Air at the back end of next year or the beginning of 2020. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Frank. So the next question, and Frank will be relieved to know that he's not going to get this one, is what is the future of bitumen production in a world where refinery capacity is likely to come under significant pressure? And so I said that again. What is the future of bitumen production in a world where refinery capacity is likely to come under significant pressure? So I'll have a go at answering this to start with, and then I'll ask David Strickland to come in and to pick up anything that I missed. And so whilst we cannot speak for any other refiner, we can only really talk about Shell and the trends that we see in the marketplace. So Shell decided some time ago that it was going to invest quite heavily in bitumen production where it made sense at its major locations. And so to that end, we have centered all bitumen production in 8 refineries in the Shell Group. They've all had significant investment in terms of the quality, the quantity, and the rateability of the production. And in fact, that investment continues with 3 more major investments ongoing at the current time. Now, we also see that around the world, production is becoming more and more disconnected from demand centers. For example, in Northwest Europe, it used to be long in terms of bitumen. There was an oversupply situation. And from this season going forward, what we see is that Northwest Europe, in the height of the season, will become short. And so, our view on this is that, our customers, need to think very hard around contracting as early as possible with their chosen suppliers. That will become ever more important to ensure that you have the grades that you require when you require them all of the time. We also see that there is some change in quality around the world, particularly with the implementation of the IMO sulfur specification. Whether that's positive or negative in the long term remains to be seen. But I think that I'll allow Dave Strickland to answer a little bit more of that question. David?
Thanks, John. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Yeah. For a moment, I thought I was on an audience with Frank Beer. So the IMO specification, a lot of people in the industry have seen the change in the IMO specification as a threat to bitumen quality. And I think the reason for that is that a lot of the residues that end up being in the fuel oil, in the high sulfur fuel oil, they're worried will end up in bitumen because they don't have the same qualities as a good bitumen residue does. And like John was saying, I can't speak for other bitumen suppliers and bitumen manufacturers, but what I can say about Shell bitumen supply chain is that we have full visibility from taking the crude oil out of the ground, refining it, processing it. We have visibility across those conditions. We select the crudes that give us a good bitumen. And we see that visibility all the way to deliver it to the customer. Now, in terms of what IMO the changes has made to Shell bitumen supply chain, they have made no difference whatsoever. We are still using the residues that give us good quality bitumen, that meets the specification and is aligned with the product stewardship requirements that we have. Back to you, John.
Thanks, David. So the next question, and Richard, I'm going to address this to you first and then to David de Mello. Are there any new solutions to increase the life of asphalt in pavements? So that's, are there any new solutions to increase the life of asphalt in pavements?
Thanks, John. It's an interesting question. I mean, at the moment, I think it's fair to say that polymer modified bitumen is probably the state of the art in terms of trying to extend the life of a pavement. That's not to say that everything resides in a purely technical solution in terms of there's still quite a lot of mileage in proper design, in proper execution of the work. There are some ways that you could maybe extend what is today possible using polymer modified bitumen, and we have been looking ourselves in our R&D program, myself and David, in terms of ways in which we can slow down the damage mechanisms. And so whilst the polymer does a very, very good job, and the bitumen does itself in terms of arresting the distress that gets put on the pavement over time, there is a natural degradation in properties as a result of environmental exposure and aging of the road. And there are some potential avenues to explore in terms of preserving the properties that arrest that distress over the lifetime of a road. And so in terms of new solutions, at the moment, I would say that polymer modified bitumen still remains the state of the art, but we are actively working and moving towards full-scale trials of technologies which can prolong the age of what we have today, or to prolong the properties over time of the solutions that we have today. I know, David, if you've got anything to add without telling everybody what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks.
We are working on something, but yeah, we've got to try and move at some point away from what we can achieve with PMB.
Yes, I think you've covered it quite well, Richard. The only thing I would say, again, without getting into the details of what we're doing, is that basically what we're trying to do is to enhance the performance of a PMB. So in combination with the polymer modified bitumen, you get that durability that comes with, and more. So as Richard said, it's probably a placeholder for future developments and future conversations with some of you on the call. Thank you.
Thanks both. So the next question that we have is, how will Shell meet their net zero carbon emission targets processing heavy crudes for bituminous products? So that's how will Shell meet their net zero carbon emission targets processing heavy crudes for bituminous products? And I'll have a go at this first, and then I'll ask Richard, who's truly our expert on this area, to step in and provide any corrections to the mistakes that I make. So the first one that we will do is that we will address our scope 1 and 2 emissions in our own plants and refineries. And this work, I can tell you, is already very well underway. Next, we will look at our products and service portfolio and adapt this to avoid emissions in the first place. We will also work with external bodies to ensure that our industry is looked at in the right way. So, for example, if we look at this on a consequential basis, then we sequester carbon in the roads, provided that it's not burnt at the end of life. And so, therefore, that carbon is never released into the atmosphere. And lastly, once we've done all the other things, if we still have a carbon positive situation, we will look at nature-based solutions. And in all of those steps that I've just mentioned, we will also ensure that all the claims we make with regard to our carbon footprint and avoided emissions are independently verified. So, Richard, perhaps anything you'd like to add or clarify?
Not too much to add, actually, John. I think, there's two parts to the story, as you say, if I just summarise, that we have to take care of our own emissions, and by that we mean the electricity we use and the fuel we burn at our own plants, which is something that we already started to work on now for a few years. We also need to collaborate with our supply chain to reduce our emissions in terms of the additives that we buy, in terms of the transport that we procure, how we move things around. On the other side, on the sort of the choices of the products that we make, in terms of longer products, we will lean quite heavily on the circular economy. But by that, I don't necessarily mean recycling, which is the first thing that springs to mind with the circular economy, but the full range of principles of the circular economy of keeping materials in service for a longer period through a combination of durability, as we've just discussed, but also in terms of maintaining those products in situ for as long as possible, and then for minimising the need for energy and resources at the end of life. Also using secondary materials and other wastes as materials. And so on the kind of footprint side, it's clear we need to decarbonise right across the chain. And then in terms of our product mix, and if you want to call it a handprint, I know that's kind of a fashionable term, but if we want to look at a handprint, we have to look at the product mix that we make and the impact that that has on our customers in terms of sustainability.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, so the next question that we've had come in, and thank you, by the way, for all of these questions. They're very challenging for us to answer. So, with current funding available, what are the best options to consider to extend the service life of roads? So again, with current funding available, what are the best options to consider to extend the service life of roads? Now, I'll take this one, but if any of the team want to jump in when I'm finished and add anything, that would be great. So from our perspective, any technology that extends the life of a road before major reconstruction is great from both a fiscal and from an environmental point of view. There are a number of different techniques. We'll just touch on some of them. High quality pothole repairs is certainly one. But when the client repairs these potholes, they often, fail again within weeks or months of having the pothole fixed. And so it's very important that the client actually looks at and understands what is causing the pothole in the first place. Now, if it's just local segregation of the asphalt material, then that is something where you can just clean the material out, put new fresh material back in, and it should be very good fix. But if it's a soft spot underneath, then if you just repair the pothole and don't repair the underlying cause, then the pothole will reoccur. And I think it's also very good to talk a little bit at this point in time about something called interspatial repeatability. This was a term that was coined by Cambridge University when they did a lot of work looking at with weigh in motion maps and looking at how damage actually occurred on roads. And what they discovered was that very often where you have localized failure, it was nothing to do with the locality of the failure itself. It was always to do with an event somewhere further back along the pavement, a bump, a failed gully grate or a drain that caused the suspension of the heavy vehicles to bounce. Now, what they also found is that heavy goods vehicles, didn't matter what type it was, all have a body bounce of about 3 hertz. So they bounce at the same rate. And when they measured the impact loading of those bouncing bodies, they found that it was about 3 times the static loading of the vehicle. Now, for those of you that believe in the fourth power law, what that says to us is that if you do 3 times, if you have 3 times the peak loading, then you could do anything up to 81 times the damage with that single vehicle. And so that repeated dynamic loading hitting the same spot because the bodies are bouncing at the same frequency and the trucks are generally speaking traveling along the road at the same pace means that you can get very localized failure. And so if you don't go back and fix the event, the bump or the loose gully grate or whatever it might happen to be, then your material will just continue to fail time after time. And so that was some very interesting research that was done at Cambridge University. Other solutions that can help us extend the life of roads, certainly surface dressing to give back texture and to seal cracks. Crack sealing itself is very effective to stop water ingress. And as we know, if you get water into a pavement, it accelerates the total failure of the pavement incredibly quickly. And so keeping them waterproof is very, very important. So crack sealing is a very good one. Microsurfacing, which will allow you to retexture, seal cracks, and also address very minor deformations is another very effective technique that can be utilized in order to extend pavement life. And lastly, one that we're seeing quite a lot here in the UK is changing the speed limits. So if you've got a fast road and you're starting to see some cracking, some failure, some deformation, what you can actually do is downgrade the speed of the road. This makes it still safe for people to utilize the road, maybe not as convenient. The problem with that is that it doesn't address the underlying structural integrity of the road, and actually, may cause higher costs in the long run. But in the short term, it is one possible solution. So I don't know if anybody else on the panel wants to jump in and add anything. If not, we can go to the next question. I think, Richard, this one will be for you, which is, what is Shell's view on the use of plastic waste into asphalt mixture for roads? So I'll say that again. What is Shell's view on the use of plastic waste in asphalt mixtures for roads? So Richard?
Yeah, thanks, John. Still a very hot topic, I would say. There's a lot of questions around this. I think that in principle, it doesn't really matter what we're talking about here. I mean, plastic is just one example of a secondary material which a large volume industry like asphalt is going to be attractive to a lot of people. We've seen that over the years with all manner of things. I guess end-of-use tyres and crumb rubber being the most well-known example. I think that anything that we bring into the asphalt supply chain or anything that we put into the bitumen that then goes on to be in the asphalt supply chain has to meet certain, given criteria, and that needs to be things that really quite sensible things, like it shouldn't cause any harm to the environment or any increase in exposure for workers. It shouldn't compromise recyclability at the end of its life. It shouldn't have an adverse effect on performance of the road. And so actually I think a lot of these things, they need to be assessed through the same framework, regardless of whether they're waste plastics or any material actually that needs to be used in the pavement. And so I'm not going to offer a specific opinion on waste plastic, although if you push me on, then I'm probably happy to. But actually, I think you have to assess everything with a kind of a straight kind of framework. So you have to have a clear set of criteria as to why you're doing it. And that needs to include also, of course, the carbon footprint of the solution. So if it doesn't add up end to end, if it doesn't actually lead to a more sustainable solution, and then we clearly shouldn't be doing it. And so things need to be assessed in a kind of structural, clear fashion, I would say. And waste plastic's no different to any other material in that regard.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Richard. I think we're just about coming to the end of our time, so I will take this opportunity to wrap up. But please don't worry if we haven't managed to get to your question. What we will do is we will take all of the unanswered questions from this session, as well as from the webinar that we held this morning, and we'll put them into a document and make that available to you. So thank you all for the questions and for your sharing. I certainly feel, and hope that you do too, that it's been a fantastic discussion. I hope that we've been able to provide you with Shell's perspective on some of the opportunities and challenges for the industry, and have begun to show that innovation and close collaboration are paramount if we are to achieve tangible solutions to meet both current and future needs. As an industry, more so than ever before, we must work together to prepare for this fast-changing world. So I, on behalf of all of us at Shell Bitumen, look forward to a continued collaboration with you to pave forward to a sustainable future. And I'll now pass back to Zillian to close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. We come to the end of today's session. Thank you for your participation. Please complete the post-event survey to let us know of your feedback. If you enjoyed today's webinar, you'll be pleased to know that this is the first in a series of webinars that we plan to run throughout the rest of the 2020 and beyond. So please look out for updates and invitations. We look forward to seeing you again at our future events. Goodbye for now.